Welcome to the Nerd Party.
They can travel anywhere in time and space.
Right. This is gonna be fun.
Off we go into time and space! Welcome to Time and Space, the Nerd Party's dedicated Doctor Who podcast. I'm Jessica Nunn.
And I'm her husband and co-host, Phillip Gilfus.
So,
I know it is a week before December, or December bouts.
Post-Thanksgiving.
And the Doctor 12th book, I believe, is at your dad's.
Oh,
Yes.
You think that's what it is?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I know that's what it is. But anyway,
How do you know that's what it is?
Because I got an Amazon notification that it was missed delivery. And I assume if there's a package at your dad's, then...
Oh, okay. It's a misdelivery?
Well, it's a doctor delivery.
Mr. Doctor, if you will.
That's right. So we look forward to hopefully reading that for next week.
Yes, I told him we could maybe come pick it up on Wednesday, but we were really busy.
Yes. So our Christmas tree is up.
It is, yes, as per your wants and desires. It
That's
goes up straight after Thanksgiving and won't come down again until Epiphany.
Yes. And, or 12th night, possibly.
12th night.
Yes. So we have a TARDIS ornament, and I believe that's all the Whovian ornaments we have on there.
Yes, although we do also have a phone box, so there's that.
That's true. Santa is in a...
Oh, and we have the TARDIS blue fascinator hat that I made at the Dickens Christmas in Fayetteville.
Yes, that we went to a day after Thanksgiving, which is a tradition in my hometown. I don't know how old it is. I mean, it's not super old, but it's old enough.
It's lots of fun.
Yes.
It's lots of fun.
Yeah, it's mostly, I have two to be exact, starships. One is missing. So if you see an Enterprise C ornament, it's mine, and let me know.
Send it back our way. We're also missing a tree topper.
Yeah.
Which I think is our own carelessness, but there you go.
Yeah, we've had this is our third Christmas with that tree, or second Christmas? I think
Third,
and
yeah.
we have yet to ever get a tree topper.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
This is the debut of our London honeymoon tour ornament.
That's right. And the year before it is the New York one. So we are in a shopping, or we have an eye open for our next one. We've already booked our holiday trip.
Yes.
We are going to Charleston, South Carolina for Christmas.
Yep.
Because usually we try to do New Year's, but because of my work schedule, I have to work that Monday and then Tuesday
And the
off.
wonky way that New Year's Eve falls.
Exactly.
It's not just your work schedule, but yeah. Yeah, so we're going to go away over Christmas and maybe find our next ornament.
Yeah. That's sort of our tradition we've done, I suppose. And we just finished watching, we sort of binged a little bit of the 11th Doctor, his second series. I'm trying to remember what that is. 10? 9? No, I can't remember off the top of my head. 7? I can't remember. But anyway.
Fun to listen to you try.
Exactly. So, so we finished that second half, or two-thirds of the last third of episodes, and then we cued in, because we're watching the Matt Smith Blu-ray collection, some of Doctor Who Confidential, which actually starts way at the beginning, with the Christmas Carol, Christmas special, which that was long, but in a good way. I mean, it was in detail.
Yeah. I expected then, when we watched the second one, for it to be as long, and I was like, oh, this is quite brief. But yeah, I really quite enjoyed the Christmas special Confidential.
Yeah. And one thing I remarked about was the table read. And I don't know, because in America, the TV series, that's not common. We were talking about West Wing did it back in the day, but that's Aaron Sorkin comes from a theater tradition, so I think a lot of the actors always say that Aaron Sorkin definitely pushes more of the theater approach to the TV series, The West Wing, and perhaps with his other enterprises as well, his other TV shows. But American TV shows, table reads are not the norm, and so I don't know if in Britain, which obviously comes from a big theater background, whether more TV shows try to do that approach.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, because I often see, at least Stephen Moffat, at least the clips I've seen, whether it was Matt or Peter, all seem to have table reads. I don't know if that was something earlier with Russell, or if with Chris is still continuing that, or I don't know if that's the norm or not. Yeah. Or that was just his.
Hashtag questions we have.
Exactly. Yeah. And we are more than happy to be invited to any table reads.
Yeah.
We'll read anything.
Yeah. I will read anything. And last night we got our next episode of New Who, Doctor Who.
That's true, yes. And so we will be talking about the Witchfinders today, Series 11, Episode 8, which premiered November 25th, 2018.
And the synopsis for this one is: Team TARDIS lands in early 17th century England in the midst of a witch trial, and despite her own non-interference policy, the 13th Doctor cannot help but try and stop the killings. However, with King James growing suspicious of the Doctor and her ways, it is up to her friends to play Witchfinders and uncover the hidden mysteries behind the trials.
It's always interesting to me after a Doctor Who episode, because of course it plays early, at least compared to us. It plays early in Britain, and so I always have to avoid Twitter, Sunday afternoon, because they've already seen it. It's because, it's like 2 o'clock our time by the time they've seen it, and it doesn't come on until 8 o'clock for us. And so I try to avoid most of it, other than, just on Twitter, I'm going to see something by accident. And usually, if it's good or bad, that's usually all I'll try to see, and I'll scan past most. But then afterwards, because we usually watch it, and then 24 hours before we record, which is what we're doing now, I do tend to dip into the Twitterverse and see what folks have said. And again, this seems to be another episode. And this is, I think this is fine, but there was sort of this is the greatest episode ever, or, this one. And so, but there's this sort of wide variety. And so I try not to let it color my thoughts. I want to be well, what do I think? I don't want others to let me think. But, all that said, what did you generally think of the Witchfinders?
Yeah, I had seen a tweet before we saw the episode of somebody saying, oh my God, this is my favorite, nothing's going to top this. Which I think colored me.
Your expectations were high.
Yes, my expectations were high. It was a perfectly enjoyable episode. I wouldn't put it... It might make my top 4, maybe, thinking about things. It was fine. It was fine. But yeah, I think my expectations were raised a little bit with that. And I also have a particular fascination, mostly with the American witch trials.
Right.
And so that's something that I find fascinating and would have liked more depth on that.
Yeah, and because, it's, I don't know, just being American, of course, not that I'm an expert, but again, familiar with the Salem witch trials, of course. Not as familiar with British witch trials, which I suppose, I was going to say started it, but anyway, so I'm trying to think what the time period would be. Similar time?
Very similar, yeah. King James took the throne in 1603.
Well, of course, the Pilgrims would be more interregnum, Cromwell, stock, Puritans and all that, so ish time period, maybe a little bit later, I suppose, but
I would say around a similar time. Again, because King James takes the throne in 1603, and the Salem witch trials were in 1620.
Right.
So not dissimilar times. But of course, so much of it was led by King James and his fascination of witchcraft, which gives us
what?
Shakespeare's Macbeth.
Oh, okay.
Which was written specifically with King James in mind. From the witches to Banquo's
that's true.
generation of kings. So, yeah.
Because I don't know and it's odd because when you talk about that, not to get off on a Shakespearean tangent, but
I'm always happy to get off on a Shakespearean tangent.
Because I'm trying to think, it's been a while since I've read long time. We've watched a version of it that with Captain Picard, Patrick Stewart, or at least I watched one. It was sort of set in sort of this different time period.
Oh, I don't think I've seen that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Anyway, so
were you watching that with another woman?
No,
were you watching Shakespeare with another woman?
You were there. You just forgotten. It has been recently, so maybe 6 months ago or something.
I think that's a big fat lie. We watched King Lear.
Well, I know that's more recent, but
yes.
Anyway, with Patrick Stewart Macbeth, because it's sort of set in a different time period, like a World War I kind of ish. Anyway, but all that to say, I don't think the witches come off bad. In other words, I would think they should come off as evil or satanic or whatever. They just come off as, they do what the Oracle does.
Yeah. I I don't know necessarily that Shakespeare... I think Shakespeare doesn't imbue with them with evil necessarily. I think the evil is understood, particularly in that time period. Right. But, yeah. But they, much like many of the Doctor Who episodes we watched, they are not where the real evil lies.
That's right.
The real evil lies in humanity. Except for this episode, where the real evil lies in the tree mud.
That's right. We'll get to that. Yep. But anyway, so we started with James, so let's stick with James.
Okay.
So, I did a little Googling, and to me it's interesting because I saw people referring to him this way, and what little I know of English history, or British history, I knew, so I knew, he was the Scottish king, and he was, James the Sixth, and then in England, he became the English king, James the First, but then I started seeing these things, he's referred to as James the Sixth and First, which I thought was interesting, because I knew those two separate, but I didn't know that's a common thing of calling him James Sixth and First, not just James the First, which I would think would be the sort of, the primary title, but anyway.
Except he was James the Sixth first, so to speak. I did see what I did.
There you go.
Yeah.
So you talked a little bit about that, but what did you know other than King James Bible and Shakespeare? Anything else that you sort of knew about King James going into this?
Obviously, the witchcraft element, a little bit. I tend to taper off after Elizabeth I in terms of my British monarchy history, although obviously James the First's family is based, yes, Mary Queen of Scots, and her beheading, and so he becomes King of Scotland very, very young, and all of that sort of stuff I know bits and pieces about.
And they sort of referred to that history of all of his regents dying of various circumstances, leading to this sort of abandonment.
Lonely little boy.
Yeah. So, but what'd you think of Alan Cumming? I know you were excited about him. What'd you think of his performance? Because that's of a few minds, having actually seen it.
I thought he was great in the role he was given. I would have loved to have seen more.
Right.
It felt written a little bit one note.
Right.
I didn't think that we got a chance to explore as much of his... again, that they talk about, the regents dying on him and things like, but we don't get to really sink our teeth in that. In the same way that we don't really get to sink our teeth into the family relationship of the... the woman.
Of
Becca,
Becca and Old Mother Twiston.
And the...
Becca. And Willa.
Willa.
Yes,
okay.
The young girl. Willa's the young girl. Becca's the villainess for our story, for our purposes.
Yes. So it felt just... So he felt a little bit underutilized. His eyelashes looked fantastic. I couldn't help but notice them frequently. And like I say, he did great. I never doubted that Alan Cumming was going to be great. But when you have Alan Cumming on your television series, you do everything you can with Alan Cumming. And I'm not sure that happened.
Well, one of the things, and again, without knowing King James, and again, a British show for a British audience, I don't know what they're expecting from King James, but obviously more than what I would do. But, and so I didn't really know his reputation, and so I was like, wow, he's really Alan Cumming-y.
There's no S. Alan Cumming.
But, the sort of like, I like to have a bit of mask, add a little bit of drama. I'm like, it sounds more like Alan Cummings than King James. Yeah. But then I did notice it, and I noted it to myself, and I'm like, it's probably just me. Is he coming on to Ryan?
When he calls him his Nubian prince, and you're questioning whether he's coming on to Ryan?
And I didn't know, and then I was in my Wikipedia, which again, not that I'm saying that's the authoritative source, but then I'm like, the chapter on King James and his, questionable sexuality. I was like, I did not know about that. And so all the men that they then listed about. So I was like, I did not know about that. So, okay.
Well, there you go.
Maybe that's why
Was there a Nubian prince amongst the list? Is this also why we end up with Othello, for instance?
Well, they were mostly
I'm
courtiers,
kidding.
yes, yeah. But I just sort of, again, without knowing that, I probably would have been like, well, maybe that's a bit of why you would cast Alan Cummings as James the First. You know,
Yeah.
what would be the thought process there? So, yeah. So to me, he's a little maybe not. He wasn't overly camp, but a little enough where I'm like, you know, the casting versus the character. I was like, meh. But I guess it made sense. I guess.
Yeah, and I think particularly with, is it Netflix that has got the Robert the Bruce?
Oh, Outlaw King.
Yes,
With Chris Pine.
With Chris Pine.
People say it's good.
I don't doubt it, but I just think there are so many talented Scotsmen out there.
Yeah.
Let's give them an opportunity to play their own history. So I hope, anyway, that was certainly part of the casting, in that, you know, who's a fantastic Scottish actor who could also play King James, and is not David Tennant, because we've used him in other episodes of Doctor Who. What, you know, or Peter Capaldi, we've used him in other episodes of Doctor Who. Who else do we have? And Alan Cumming is a fantastic, the right age, the right mentality, brilliant actor.
And I guess I didn't get, and maybe, again, I only watched the episode once. The King James is well,
also, I assume Richard Madden was too young and busy doing The Bodyguard.
There you go.
Or Bodyguard, sorry.
And the fascination with Satanism, or, you know, the fascination's the wrong word, but the crusade, if you will, against it. You know, where did that religious fervor, you know, come from? You know, because I can see, you know, Mary, the Tudor. I know where the Tudor family was religious. I don't know where the Stuart family comes from. You know, why is he so?
Well, and the Tudor family was so back and forth.
Yeah, Catholic,
obviously.
Protestant.
And I think that, if I'm not mistaken, and I am correctable on this, but if I'm not mistaken, the Stuarts were initially Catholic, but part of the deal
Wasn't
with
everyone.
James the First was that he had to sort of be
tapered off.
even-keeled. And maybe that's part of where this comes from, all of the uncertainty of the time. You know, there's so much bloodshed and anguish over really, ultimately, what are small differences. But it's the same impetus, I think, that led him to say, okay, we're going to redo the whole Bible and cut out bits that we don't like. That sort of need to have the religious underpinnings more stable than they had been in the last 50 years.
And like many rulers of the time and previous, I mean, go all the way back to Constantine, you believe, you know, a strong religious identity helps build a strong nation. You know, if we're all on the same page, makes us a stronger nation, stronger identity or whatever. And so, you know, Elizabeth had kind of tried that, you know, after Book of Common Prayer and everything else. And then, so now James is like, well, we're not the same Bible. You know, it's an English Bible, literally and figuratively. And then, you know, so I felt that. But the little bit of reading was sort of like, he sort of had a mixed record with sort of antagonizing the Catholics, though, of course, the gunpowder plot and all that. But that he sort of was like, you know, I mean, if they want to be Catholic, as long as they're quiet about it and pretend not to be, you know, that's fine. And so that was sort of, and he tried to keep out of the 30 Years' War, whatever the big religious war was. He tried to keep out of that. So anyway, that's what little I know.
But yeah, I think, again, trying to find that stability and therefore seeing evil, seeing bad things around every corner.
And again, it seemed like identity, because he was obviously very big on trying to create a Great Britain. And you know, he was like, no, thank you.
Yeah. And also, I mean, if you think about the instability and the horrors that must have surrounded him personally.
Right.
And so it makes it, I think when you've experienced that much trauma, it's easy to see the devil in that.
The devil in the details. What'd you think about the sort of the Doctor and the King? You know, when they were sort of having, when she was sort of in the docks or whatever you want to call it, and having their little discussion about how that went.
Again, I just wanted more. I felt like they could have gone deeper. They could have really sunk into that nicely. And the same thing at the end when he kills Becca.
Yeah.
And
I burned a witch. I'm good.
yeah.
It's like, were you not listening?
And then she's like, I'm not speaking to you. I'm really cross with you. And then she's speaking with him. You know, there's no denouement, if you will.
Well, I think that last act kind of suffered.
Yeah, yeah. Again, and I've said this over and over and over again, this needed to be an hour and a half.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's interesting, and again, take everything that's what it's worth. But, I see sometimes like, oh, it's preachy, and I'm like, well, is it just because it's a woman? Or, if it was, Peter Capaldi giving a speech, is it then like, oh, it's a good speech, but if it's a woman, well, then it's preachy. And I don't think it was, even, trying to be value neutral. But, between the king and her, it was, I guess, circular. Like, she was saying good stuff, and he was sort of bouncing back with his circular logic, and like nothing really went anywhere. And again, it doesn't necessarily she have to win, because it's not like she's going to cure King James. But yeah, like you said, to open up something, at least you have that positive where maybe she caused him to think, and I think it did show that a little bit. But yeah, it was just sort of like him saying Satan, 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 Satan. She's like, fine, whatever.
Yeah. And then after that moment in the docks is when he kills the witch, quote unquote, and
that to me, that the part of the tree at the end, to skip to the end with him, it seemed rushed, and like it even seemed that there were points, or I was almost, and having only watched it once, there was parts when they were fighting the mud people. It also seemed anticlimactic, not that it wasn't interesting and you didn't know what was going to happen. But, like, it's almost like, and they fight and they win. But there wasn't sort of like a big hero moment. Like, I was expecting some sort of like, oh, it looks like they're going to win. And then the doctor does something and then she won. It was just sort of very straight through. There was no sort of like, I was waiting for some sort of hero moment or some unexpected thing. And it just wasn't. Yeah. Never came.
Yeah.
I thought there was potential there to make that scene a little bit greater.
Yes, I would agree with that.
But anyway, what did you think of the king with his Witchfinder general, Graham?
I thought it was a little silly. I completely understand it. But I thought it was played a little silly, I suppose.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Well, I thought...
But he got to wear this cool hat.
That's true.
He's a pilgrim hat.
Which is
perfect for Thanksgiving.
Yeah, it's interesting. I never thought about it, but I mean, like, what little I knew of King James, like, I would picture King James wearing that hat.
Yes, yeah.
And so it was kind of weird to see it on Graham.
Very Puritan.
I think it was on. It wasn't. I think there must be a thing every episode to put something on Graham. Like it's either sunglasses, women's sunglasses, or a big pilgrim hat, or just something that he can wear the whole episode.
I like it.
So I think they're just trying to haze him. Yeah, but I thought James, and this is going to go into our next topic here, sort of. A lot of these episodes, we've had Rosa and stuff like that, where we obviously talk about race and we had Punjab talk about religion and all that. But for the most part, and I'm talking about Doctor Who in general, and then the 13th Doctor specifically series, we try to play like we're all on the same page. But I think King James is very much like, you're black, you're a woman, and I'm like, oh, hey, hold on, James, you're destroying everything that we try to do here, And it's like, okay.
And you're Mexican? Yeah.
That's why she was at another scene. I didn't want to confuse them.
Fair.
But like, it's all like, instead of then I want to talk about the doctor being a woman in case you didn't notice. But it's sort of like, any other time she'd be like, yes, I'm the Witchfinder general. And things like, no, you're a woman. So it's obviously Graham. You must be his assistant. Well, no, her psychic paper
changes. The first time when she shows it to
Becca, that's right.
It says that she's the Witchfinder.
And then when she shows it to
General.
James.
And then when she shows it to James, it says Witchfinder's General's assistant.
Because his brain couldn't accept whatever was on there.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, this is definitely, I think, an episode where we emphasize, emphasize is the wrong word, but the Doctor's a woman, in case no one noticed.
Yeah, I think you kind of have to with this episode because the witch trials were so much about female oppression.
Right.
And, the number of men who were hanged for witchcraft is considerably smaller than the number of women.
I don't know the British number, but I know, was it Crucible or Salem? Or
in Salem, I think it was
2 or 3.
I think it was 2 men who were hanged. I'm not 100% positive, but I think it was 2 men who were hanged and 1 man who was pressed to death, not for witchcraft, but for refusing to enter a plea of guilty or not guilty. More dogs were hanged. They hanged 3 dogs and only 2 men.
Right. And no cats, though.
No cats,
Which is odd.
That doesn't surprise me at all. So the first...
They tend not to hang around.
They tended, yeah. The first woman hanged in Salem was Bridget Bishop, who owned a pub. Mm-hmm. I mean, she was a woman with some standing.
Right.
It wasn't necessarily, in a Puritan world, the most auspicious standing, but it was a businesswoman. You know, so it was about, in a lot of ways, oppression.
But yeah, I think with the 13th Doctor, I mean, I don't know. It's one of those things like if they had sort of ignored it, I mean, not, for lack of a better word, but it's, you know, sort of have the Doctor being the Doctor, and then, you know, whatever. But like then with the 13th Doctor in a witch hunt story, like, well, she's probably going to be thought to be a witch. I mean, you know, it's I guess it's obvious.
It's a little inevitable.
Yeah.
But, you know, thinking about it, I don't think that any of the other Doctors could tell this story.
Right.
I don't think that it would have worked.
Because like it'd usually be the companion that gets, you know, dumped or something.
Yeah.
But they don't have, you know, tales of Houdini and whatever to fall back on.
Exactly. Yeah. I did think it was interesting, and I can't remember exactly. I think, it's to follow the mud people.
Right.
When the time comes to follow the mud people or hang around with King James, the Doctor sends all of her newbie companions / fam to follow the aliens, and she stays back.
Right.
Which I found to be a little bit difficult to appreciate. Mm-hmm. It didn't seem like something the Doctor would do.
I guess she thought maybe she could deal with him more than they could.
Yeah, but then sending them to chase the aliens.
That
was the thing that felt strange to me.
Was it Graham or something like, when we find them, I guess we actually don't know what to do after we found them.
Yeah, it just seemed a strange choice that was necessary to get us to the next plot point, but wasn't necessarily something that made sense.
And then one thing, there was sort of an interesting moment here with this episode. You know, we sort of get the don't interfere, and I forget what it was. You know, it was literally said that some point during this episode. I forget if it was early on or not. You know, and I forget whether she said don't interfere or is the gang, you know, saying, oh yeah, don't interfere. And felt to myself when I was watching, like, she says that a lot. And I mean, come on now. And then of course this is the episode where she's like, she finally
just kidding.
Yeah, during the dunking. I was gonna say the hanging. During the dunking, of course, a little late by the time she, you know. But I mean, she interferes though. By the time she interferes, it's too late. So she really hasn't interfered. But you know, the 13th Doctor. I'm stuck in this series is a revival of the classic Who. And of course, classic Who is a broad topic, so I'll say early classic Who. You know, this is sort of like 1-2 classic Who with non-interference.
No, it's supposed to be 1-2 buckle my shoe.
Non-interference, but of course they inevitably do.
Yeah.
And so I think she's sort of going old school or OG Doc. You know, and of course I think of like with the 11th Doctor with what's it called, The Tale Below or whatever. It's his second episode with Amy when he's like, okay, there's rules. The rules is we don't interfere, and then it's like, well, unless there's a crying child, you know, in that case you interfere. And I think this the 13th Doctor has sort of been like, well, you know, we don't want to, and then you know, with the crying girl or the woman, and so.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting that she finally sort of broke her rule, which, of course, the Doctor's always broken that rule, but, you know.
Yeah. Well, and the two places in particular that interfering is not a good idea, the Rosa Parks episode and the Punjab episode, the consequences for interfering were very, very clear.
Right.
Whereas in this, save a Pendle witch. It's good.
Yeah.
It's good. Pendle witches, by the way, Philip, are the most famous witches, witchcraft things that happened in England, I would think. The Pendle witches are pretty well known.
Okay.
Still following us around in ghost stories.
Oh, well, I wouldn't know. There you go.
Yeah, there you go. Right.
And then going in a little bit into, I guess, sort of the leftover, which is, I suppose, this is the main story. But, you know, you had Yaz and Willa and the Old Mother Twistin and Becca and the Morax. And I didn't really follow it, I suppose. I mean, I did, but it didn't make sense. And again, Doctor Who doesn't have to make sense. I was listening to another podcast, and this is fine. I'm not trying to insult this, but listening to another Doctor Who podcast, and they were like, "Oh, we're gonna have to think about this one episode more." I'm like, "Well, if you have to think about an episode, that probably means it wasn't written very well." I mean, it's good to have themes. Like, as a playwright, I know I write stuff where I want people to leave the theater going, and then have something to talk about. But I don't want them to have to think about it for a week and be like, what was he? Maybe that was, and that was,
What was it about?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I feel like you want it to be a little straightforward sometimes.
Yeah.
Cause topics of discussion, but you want it to be straightforward enough.
Yes, yeah. Well, and again, I mean, there were just holes that we don't get to explore. We never talk about, really, the Willa, Twiston, Becca. There's never a moment where where Becca's like, "Oh yeah, family." There's nothing.
In other words, by making them relations, you could have not made them relations, and the story would have been the same. Oh, I just called on the old woman healer, to help me. Other than the woman who raised me, it doesn't really either way.
Yes,
help.
Unless potentially, and again, 90 minutes.
Yeah.
To see Becca fighting the Morax within her. If we could have seen some of that, some of these moments of this is my family, this is my family, this is my family, and then the alien tamps that down and comes back to it. I also don't know why she had an axe in her bedroom.
Well, I was thinking this. Well, I guess maybe just as her defense. But then I was wondering, well, why did
her defense against what?
The mud people coming.
There was a mud person inside her. She was buggered.
Oh, I know. She was trying to cut off her leg that first time.
Oh, is that why?
But
I wondered about that. Yeah.
The old woman wouldn't do it, I guess.
Yeah.
So anyway.
And so she just kept it around as a memento?
Well, I was then wondering why the mud people went to get the axe and then go after her. Because even the doctor was like, oh, well, I guess they're not trying to get her, though. The axe is kind of a... one. But I guess what they were trying to get the axe so they could cut the tree down.
But they didn't. But the spell had already,
well, not all the way, because they still had to get the king.
Oh, right. And was that the way to do it? Okay.
I guess. To break it even more.
Okay.
I guess.
I don't know.
Yeah, it was a little fuzzy. The whole, I mean, if I was like, it was this morning or something like, let me think logically what the story would have is actually, there's the mud people, and then she gets the mud in her, and then she's infected, and then she decides to kill witches to distract from the fact that she's possessed, and it falls apart a little bit. But I think,
and she has a lot of handkerchiefs.
Yeah.
Because she's coughing up mud, but she tells the doctor she doesn't have one on her, which is a lie. Because then later on she uses it to wipe the mud out of her eyes. There were just a lot of dangly bits. I'll be honest.
I'd have to watch it again.
A lot of dangly bits.
Because I think there's a lot of stuff there. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, this is a rich, obviously, it's why the witch story gets told often enough. It's unpleasant, of course, but the themes are not old. They are constant of rousing a population based on fear, focusing on another. Those are all the reasons you have problems. And, I mean, whether it's small scale or big scale.
And whether or not you stand up to...
Right, because then you had the moment with Willa, where she sort of had to be like, oh, maybe...
She is a witch.
Because, the whole... Because it was interesting. It was such a small analogy, and maybe it went by. But when Yaz was talking to her, oh, I know what you're feeling. It's the same thing I felt when, the entire grade was against me in whatever grade she was in school. Which seems silly, but, I mean, that's the mentality. It's focusing on a community or a classroom or whatever group, and you just sort of get this mass hysteria, whether it's a whole town or whether it's a school or whether it's a office or whether it's a whatever. We all wonder, how could have X happened in history, whether it's something as horrible as sort of, the German people with the smoke outside their city doing nothing about the Holocaust or whatever. I mean, not to pick on them, but anyone in history, why did they do nothing? And sort of what the group can do.
That sort of mass
individuals can be good,
groups
can be bad.
Yeah, and that's sort of truth universally acknowledged.
But I think, but more with Becca, the fact that she was the villain. I mean, this was the one where not only were the humans the villain as usual, but there were actually alien villains this time.
Yes.
So it was sort of like, we're doing both this time.
But again, there's no redemption of Becca at all.
Right.
Like, she was a dreadful human being before she was inhabited by mud people. The reason she ended up inhabited by mud people was because she was going to chop down this ancient tree because it was blocking her view. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And now, as a wealthy landowner, I also don't understand why she felt the need to chop it down herself.
You hire someone.
Absolutely, you hire someone for that sort of nonsense. But never mind.
Yes.
Holes, darling.
Yeah.
Holes.
So that's why, like, my personal thing, it's not the greatest, but it's not the worst. I mean, and again, you will watch the series again in Blu-ray or whatever form it'll take in 5 years from now, and we'll probably be like, oh, different opinions about stuff. But for now, Kerblam's still my lowest. This may be next to the lowest. But I'd have to think about it. Maybe the first episode, I don't know, is
what was the first episode?
The Woman Who Fell to Earth. You know,
oh, yeah.
I don't know. Well, maybe we'll rank it when we do our series overview.
Yeah,
we'll
I
rankings.
think we're going to have to.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to really sit down and think about it.
But I feel like this one had a lot of potential.
Yes.
Because it's a rich story, as we said, or rich thoughts, whether it's the Satanism concerns of King James, or whether it's the, whipping up the population of Becca, or
the aliens,
or Willa having to make the choice about community versus family versus hysteria. Lots of stuff going on.
The Doctor Who's experience with Houdini.
Yeah, that's right. So,
yes, I think there was an incredible, and again, 90 minutes. Chris Chibnall, just give it. Either make them 2 episodes long, or make them 90 minutes long. But I feel like I have said this about so many episodes, in that it was so dense that you had to leave a lot of things out, and therefore there were holes.
Yeah, of mud.
Of mud.
Okay.
Holes of mud. Is that a thing?
Yeah.
Holes? I don't think holes can be of anything, can they?
Well, holes in mud? Mud holes?
Mud holes.
Like the one I step
maybe.
in coming into this house?
And then bring it onto the carpet because you can't use the doormat?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
This is how it all comes back to us.
Yes.
Well, with all that...
Yes, let's jump into the TARDIS library.
When you close your eyes...
I go to the library.
Go to the library now.
With The Diary of River Song, Series 1, release date December 2015.
Now, this one contains 4 stories, and we have gone through 3.5 of them.
Yep.
So, we decided
We did a lot of driving over Thanksgiving.
Well, we also decided not to wait till we finished it.
Yes.
Now, you don't know this, but I'll let you know now. So we're halfway through the 4th. Well, I don't know how. We might be more than halfway, 3/4 of the way through episode 4. There's a 5th episode, which is just an hour of behind the scenes.
Oh, what fun!
I know.
Yay!
I know. I didn't ask you this, but I could tell after the end of every episode, you're like, why isn't there behind the scenes? And I was like,
yes.
And I was like, this is going on. I'm like, how many episodes are on this thing? So I was actually surprised there were 4 episodes. I thought it'd maybe just be 3 or something, and it kept on going. I'm like, well, that's fine. But then I noticed the 5th one. I'm like, there's a 5th. I was like, oh, it's not, but behind the scenes.
Yay!
It's like an hour long, too.
I'm so excited.
So we'll just briefly go through the synopsis, and we'll talk about what we thought. And you can decide whether we're going to be spoilery or not. So the first...
I don't think we can be.
Yeah.
I think we have to be really careful.
Sure. And so spoilers, which is ironic. So the first story is The Boundless Sea by Jenny T. Colgan.
Who has written something else that we've listened to?
I feel
Because
the
I
answer is
remember, I know she did, because I remember at the time I went, hey, I've read some of her books. So yeah, I did several sort of chick lit books in the early 2000s as well. So there you go.
I'll read the synopsis here. So,
Okay.
River Song has had more than enough excitement for a while. Deciding the universe and her husband can look after themselves, she has immersed herself in early 20th century academia, absorbed in writing archaeological theses. But when a mysterious tomb is found in a dry, distant land, excitement comes looking for River. Can Professor Song stop any more members of the expedition from dying? What deadly secrets lie buried within the crypt? And will British consul Bertie Potts prove to be a help or a hindrance? So what did you think of this first Big Finish Diary of River Song Series 1 story?
I think, if I'm not mistaken, we finished this and I said, well, that wasn't my favorite.
Right.
And you responded with...
It's the first one.
It's the only one you've heard.
Yes.
And I was like, yes, I know, but it wasn't my favorite. Reminded me a little bit of the Aztec stuff from the first Doctor. I didn't find, I don't know, I wanted River to be ever so much more effervescent.
Right.
And yeah, this was just a generally kind of strange one. Although I have to say, I really like the name Birdie.
I was also trying to figure out, and I don't, this is, I think, up to the audience. I mean, I'm sure there is an answer, but I'm not going to try to pin it down, but like where we are in the River Song timeline. So, because I feel she's already married, so so it has to be past a certain point. But she does sort of seem dejected. So I'm like, at what point is she sort of retreating? She's sort of not her most rivery in this first episode.
Yes.
But that's the point. The point is supposed to be, as I read in the synopsis, she's sort of retreated for the world and is not really up for excitement or adventure. Just wants to sit and read for a moment. So I was trying to figure out where we were then.
Yes.
But in any case, it was, I liked it. Various characters, and it got complicated, might be the wrong word. It got a little complicated at the end. I mean, but not necessarily, but as far as who was living and who was not living and everything.
Although some of that comes into play later on, in later episodes. But yes, I agree. I felt that it got a little wonky, and are they alive or are they dead? Or
and so, but it was interesting. I mean, the whole thing I think was interesting. This, I think, our first Big Finish production I think Class was the only thing we've ever listened to. It's multi-volume. The Eighth Doctor just sort of one adventure each, where there's sort of been this thread. So all of Series 1 is connected. That's sort of a straight through line with all these stories.
And that didn't happen with Class.
Right.
Class was still sort of one-shots.
Yeah. Episodic.
Yeah, so I guess I was a little surprised, and it took me a little, I mean, not a whole long time, but to figure out that all the threads were starting to run together.
They would just sort of drop a hint. So, like, at the end of this episode, I think it's 2 spoilers, she gets invited to a party, which means episode 2 is...
The Party!
I Went to a Marvelous Party by Justin Richards.
Riversong always enjoys a good party, even when she's not entirely sure where or when the party is taking place. But the party she ends up at is one where not everything, or indeed everyone, is what it seems. Being River, it doesn't take her too long to go exploring, and it doesn't take her too long to get into trouble. The sort of trouble that involves manipulating other civilizations, exploitation, and, of course, murder. River is confident she can find the killer, but can she identify them before anyone else, or quite possibly everyone else, gets killed?
So the first one was your sort of Aztecian, Egyptian tomb raidery thing. Mm-hmm. With episode 1 sort of has it's not a mummy, but think of it as sort of your mummy.
My mummy?
Episode 2 is your murder mystery.
On a cruise ship kind of thing.
Sort of the Murder on the Orient Express, which they actually make reference to in a later episode. But yeah, so what did you sort of think of this? This introduces sort of the rulers, which will become part that we're learning more and more about. These uber rich folks who are manipulating worlds. But what do you sort of think of this murder mystery?
I liked it. I liked the solution to it. I liked the fact that really, even though it's part of the thread, it totally was a standalone episode.
Right.
Except for the very, very end, which leads us into the next episode.
Right.
And, of course, the reappearance of a character.
Mm-hmm.
It really could just have stood on its own. And there weren't too terribly many characters, and when I'm listening, sometimes I struggle with a lot of characters.
There basically was River. There was the native
reappearance
of the reappearance of the other character. There was the native of the planet, the young girl, or I assume she was young. She was the murder victim's assistant, for lack of a better word. And then you sort of have the bad woman, and you have the other bad guy.
Yeah.
And there was a
dead guy.
Yeah. So anyway.
Yeah.
So, yeah, other than maybe confusing some men, it was pretty recognizable. Yeah. Yeah, I thought it all flowed together. It was interesting. I got a little confused near the end that you had to explain to me what actually had happened.
Yes.
So, but that may have been just me.
Well, and you were driving, so you couldn't pay quite as much attention.
Mm-hmm. But as you say, we then get into the very head messing up of Signs by James Goss, River Song is on the trail of the mysterious planet-killing spore ships. Nobody knows where they come from. Nobody knows why they are here. All they do know is that wherever the spore ships appear, whole civilizations are reduced to mulch. But River has help. Her companion is a handsome, time-traveling stranger, someone with specialist knowledge of the oddities and dangers the universe has to offer. For Mr. Song has a connection to River's future, and he would never want his wife to face those perils alone. So, I mean, this isn't a spoiler. I mean, so this episode is with a person who is the Doctor that we have never heard before.
Yes.
I think that's fair to say.
Yes. Yes, which I didn't like at all.
Right. So, like the concept or the episode or what?
The episode was okay.
It's just the two of them. So it's just two people this whole episode, basically. More or less.
More or less, yeah. The episode was okay. It was convoluted. I think this would have made a better visual episode. Because it was hard sometimes.
Yeah, there are these dream sequences that River is having throughout this episode. And so that would be a good visual. And then there are sort of these, not jumps in time, but it is sort of hard to be,
Yeah.
The visual probably would have helped.
But jumps. Yeah, and I think also because we don't know the way it ends, obviously, there are a lot of things that are rather unpalatable through the episode. But then at the end, you're like, oh, okay.
Right.
Okay, I can get behind this, but initially very unpalatable. And they don't necessarily explain a whole lot of things. Like, they introduce this topic of, and this might be a minor spoiler, although if you don't know anything about this, I don't think it will be. They introduce this idea of cloning.
Right.
That just sort of comes out of thin air,
right.
I thought.
And then which seems to come important later. Or at least ties other bits of threads together.
Yes, but again, still seems to come out of midair.
Right. Yeah, and I think there are some parts of this episode that go a little long for me, or that get repetitive, I guess might be a better way of saying it. And maybe it's just that they're drawing out the character moments with the Doctor, I'm quotation marking, with the Doctor and River. And so, if you don't mind a story that takes its time and lets it breathe, then this is a good episode.
Well, and again, I think perhaps if this were a visual episode, it wouldn't have felt quite so draggy. But because it's just the two of them, and like, for instance, the scene where, well, a couple of scenes. One of them is the scene where they're talking to the Unity planet.
Right.
And so it's just this sort of monologue / duologue.
Yes.
As they're giving this speech. And then later on, she's giving a speech to academia that is also just this sort of monologue. And because we're not seeing reactions from other people, we're not seeing what's happening to her, and that in that moment where she loses her cool and things like that, it's a little bit harder.
Now, this is not spoilerly, or we'll try to confine the discussion here. In that dream sequence, it's a dream sequence, I don't think it's spoilery, where she's having this academic talk. Now, it seems to me they're implying that the audience is the Doctors.
Yes.
Though that's a really loud applause from 11 people.
Yes. Well, I got the impression that they were at least there.
Oh, okay. I thought it was just them.
No,
and then
I didn't think that.
And I just remember that had to be, can't be more than 11. Well, because I don't think she's met 12 at this point. I don't think she has. Because, I mean, of course we know from the wives, after she meets 12, that's kind of the end for her. Yeah. So it can only be 11, so anyway.
Yes. Yeah, I was just thinking moving
War
her
Doctor,
timeline backwards.
Anyway.
Yeah. I mean, she does make a reference to
the bow tie.
The bow tie. Yeah. I also found it really distracting that clearly they just had one or two guys who were probably in the sound booth.
Yeah, there was all like, hello, or hi-yo.
Every now and then they'd be like, worst game show ever. And I'm like, what? What is happening? It was a little bit discombobulating. Yeah. But
so this episode will have you obviously very confused the whole time, because you're like, why is there an unknown Doctor this episode? And that obviously that's the whole point of the episode. I mean, that's not a spoiler. That's because that's the whole episode. And so if and considering it's long, well, it seems long with two people and not a lot of action, that will leave you going like, solve the damn mystery already.
Yes. What is going on?
Why is there no TARDIS? Why is there no...
And then we move on to the 4th episode, The Rulers of the Universe. And in this one, as shocking secrets are exposed and a grand plan for the universe is revealed, River decides it's time she took control of events once and for all. Out in deep space, a clandestine society faces off with an ancient and powerful alien force. But for River, there's an added complication. The 8th Doctor has been caught in the middle, and she must make sure her future husband can arrive at his own destiny with all his memories, not to mention his lives, intact.
Now, we haven't finished this one. I think we have 20 minutes left.
Yes, we just got to the part where the 8th Doctor showed up.
Well, not just.
Relatively recently.
I don't know about that. But anyway.
I know about that.
Because they met him, and then he got into the shuttle, and then she talked to him, and now she's talking with the Doctor, and they're going back and forth. Anyway. So... But I like... I mean, I am a fan of the 8th Doctor at this point. I would... if we ever do our Doctor rankings again, his, obviously, stock always rises. Because, I mean... I've said it before, if I've said it again. He just has this passionate voice of if how you would describe the 8th Doctor. I think passionate is sort of he just has this way of talking, which obviously, Paul McGann doing Big Finish, all these productions, that's what he does. So I was very happy to hear him show up and glad that they did that. And sort of this episode is sort of wrapping together sort of the spore ships and the rulers and the 8th Doctor and trying to put them all together, and obviously we're going to see how it all ends up. But so far, how are you thinking?
Yeah, I'm glad to have a canon Doctor back on board. Very, very glad about that, because I was just not happy in episode 3.
Right.
But...
It wasn't Peter Cushing.
It wasn't Peter Cushing, that's true. Thank God for small miracles. But, yeah, I need to see how it ends. How they're able to tie up all of these loose ends. So
we're looking forward to finishing it. So, without knowing how this one ends, of course, are you then excited to see what the Diary of River Song Series 2 is like?
Yes. I still love River Song. Mm-hmm. I love her best with the Doctor, but...
Yeah, how are you liking her on her own? Because, you never know. Take a character away from the Doctor. Sometimes it's not the same, but...
I mean, I think one of the things that makes River so phenomenal is her flirt.
Right.
Not just with the Doctor, but with everybody. Mm-hmm. And I feel like we've missed some of that in this. She hasn't had to use her feminine wiles on anyone. Baba-boom. Yeah, or even her hallucinogenic lipstick. So, yeah, I miss that. Mm. And hopefully maybe the second season will have more of that.
Sure. Well, that's about it for our review of that. And so next week we'll be talking about It Takes You Away, which I believe is the penultimate episode.
It is, yes.
Unless you're counting the New Year's episode. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, they usually group those with the beginning of the next season, don't they?
They do, but I don't know. So
we'll see.
We'll see.
Penultimate regular term episode.
Yes.
Yeah. Term time episode, if you will.
Sure. So, until then, if you would like to tell us about your Big Finish recommendations or your favorite River Song moments, you can reach me at NC Public Servant on Twitter.
And you can find me at One Phoenix Theater.
So until next week, enjoy watching, listening, and reading about the Doctor's adventures throughout time and space.
This is BBC Television.